resource page of our website, hopefully in the upcoming week. And that way you can go back and recheck anything if you want to revisit. Thank you everyone for coming, and I'm sure people will still continue to file in. We're really glad to have you here. We had a great turnout for our first session, and I'm glad we seem to be having a really good turnout for our second one as well. And we look forward to giving you as much information as we can, and hope and think that it will be helpful for you. I will be presenting today with my colleague, Kaylin Rishardi. And another colleague of mine, Patty Wilson, is here. She is going to be monitoring the chat box as we go through the presentation. Definitely feel free to kind of make notes to yourself for any questions. We will have a question and answer session at the end. But along the way, if you have some short questions, you can also put them into the chat box, and Patty will be responding to those if it's something quick and easy. If it's something that's a larger level, she may kind of prompt one of us to talk about it so that everyone can benefit. But we, as we go through, you may find some questions get answered in a later slide, so you might want to give a chance for us to cover everything. But again, you're welcome to use the chat feature along the way. We will be covering a wide variety of topics today, from forms and authorizations, procedures, tips, dispel some rumors that are persistent and continue to be out there year after year. And as you may be aware, we are working under 1998 regulations. But we also have had 25 years of legislation since the first adoption of those regulations. So we've had a number of things that have changed and a number of things that have not. And so this is just a chance to kind of review everything and hope to give you some guidance and assistance when you are looking out there to hire staff. So some of you may notice that our website has changed, and it's actually continuing to change. We are continuing to make updates on a regular basis. There was a lot of information that was being transitioned over, and we are trying to do a better job of making it easily accessible and easy to locate. The main page of our website, you may have noticed that we have tabs across the top where you can immediately search for specific areas, school districts. So any of the school district information, anything for HR is going to be posted under that. And cert alerts are also another key topic when we have new memos or new alerts that are being put out to the field. That's where you can locate those on the website. You'll also notice we have some new buttons. There's a direct CECS login. So when educators say, I don't know where to go to renew my certificate or to log in, that will be right there. And as you scroll down the page, there are many other links. The district resources, not only is it at the top in the little menu across the top, but at the bottom of the page, there's another link that says view resources that also brings you to our HR page. You will note that there are forms. So forms are in two locations. Part of the public forms can be found under forms and guides. Ones that are specific to the district are listed only under district resources. So that's things like DSAP applications and temporary coaching permits, and anything that requires a district request. Those are not listed in the general public forms. Those are only available under district resources. So that's where you were going to go for those. Let's see. So when you switch over to the certification resources page for our districts, this is what you would see. You'll notice at the top we have educator lookup. That is something that there is a public educator lookup on our main page as well. This is one that we are trying right now. This brings you to the same general educator lookup, but we are looking to have that changed into one that will allow districts to include the person's last 4 digits of their social and get more information and be able to actually print copies of certificates. So that is not active right now as far as I'm aware, but they are working on that to make it a little more user friendly for you. The general public lookup will tell you the person's name and the certificate, but a lot of times districts want to have an actual copy of the certificate. And you'll see here that once you're on the district page, there's the link for forms for district use at the bottom, the circled. The other three middle buttons I want to bring your attention to. So one is compliance. So any questions that you have that are specific to compliance, or you're looking for the guide to assignment codes, the timeline, anything with compliance, that's where you can go to get that information. And then if you want to dig deep on areas like substitute teaching and DSAPs, and so those are some our top areas coming in from HR, they have their own direct links there as well. The first thing I should mention, and I think everyone's aware of this one, is that the rules that we have, the laws, the regulations are there. You know, when we tell you you can or cannot hire someone, it's not that we're trying to be difficult. It's that we are following laws that we are required to do. And our statutory requirement is that anyone who is serving as an employee of a district must hold an appropriate state certificate. And that they need to hold that certificate before they can sign a formal employment contract. Now, keep in mind that there are people who are going to be coming into your schools and they're not going to have a formal contract necessarily. You're going to have a daily sub, or someone who's there for less than 40 days, and those people are that during that period of time they're not going to hold the authorization. But you want to make sure that you are applying certificates, submitting applications as soon as possible if you're considering hiring someone, because there is the processing that has completed before they can be placed in the classroom in front of students. The statutes go on to basically say that the educators need to be properly certified, and if they're not, there can be a penalty, a financial penalty to the Board of Education. The other thing is it can impact the educator that as far as their teacher retirement, advancing a certificate. So it's very important that they have the appropriate certificate to serve in that role. The other thing is that you want to make sure that, especially now, we are more transparent. So when it comes to percentages of compliant or non-compliant educators, that is now outwardly visible to the public through the Ed Site website. And so again, the general public in your districts, they're going to be able to see, do you have fully compliant staff in your district or not? So for many reasons, you want to make sure that you are really up to date on where the certificates stand. Background checks. So there are mandated background checks, and these occur both at the state level and at the district level. So you know that you have your own fingerprinting and background checks that you have to do upon hire when someone is coming into your district. Anyone who submits an application to the State Department of Education, we also do a criminal background check and a DCF check. Those are required by law. So every application that comes in, they have to go through a DCF background check. So if they apply and then 2 months later they apply for a coaching permit separately, they're going to go through it again. So those, that's one thing to keep in mind, is sometimes you'll have somebody who submits an application and then you're waiting, and then maybe the first application cleared, but then they submitted a new application and it's going to throw into the background check again. So just be very aware when you're applying for certificates for people, be aware of that, of building in time for your coaches, for your long-term subs, for your DSAPs. There is time that has to be, we have no control over how quickly something goes through DCF. In an ideal world, it would be 2 to 4 weeks, but we've had some issues where it's taken months. And we hope that doesn't happen very often, but just be prepared. So that's why you really don't want to wait till the last minute if it's at all possible. The other thing I want to mention about the mandated background checks is if you are hiring someone, if you are daily subs, substitutes without a bachelor's degree, independently contracting someone in the district, these people are not having applications come into our office, which means they are not getting the background checks. It is particularly important for your own liability as a district that you make sure these background checks are being done, because we have no way to, if there's no application, there's no way we can run a background check on them. There's no way that we can notify you of anything. So you want to be very diligent in making sure that all of your employees, whether it's short-term or long-term, are getting background checks. Connecticut has 3 types of certificates. We have the initial, the provisional, and the professional. Our initial is a 3-year certificate. Provisional is an 8-year, and the professional more recently became a 10-year certificate. It used to be a 5-year, but they now moved it to 10-year. So that's a good thing to be aware of. One common question we get from people is, well, I don't know, should I be applying to renew or should I advance? And the bottom line is get an application in, and we will make the determination of what the appropriate level is. So don't hold off because I'm not sure if I should renew or advance. We have plenty of people who apply to renew, and we get into their file and we're like, nope, you're ready to advance. And we have just as many who apply to advance and we say, nope, you're going to renew. So, don't let that hold up your candidates who are saying, I didn't apply because I don't know which one. Get an application in, that becomes a placeholder, and that way you're covered, and we'll figure out what the appropriate level is. So there are a number of types of certificates that are temporary certificates and authorizations, and beyond our initial, provisional, and professional. This is a list of some of them. We are going to be discussing each of these today. And they each have their own special little rules and requirements. And so as you can see, there's a lot of flexibility. There are a lot of ways you can potentially authorize someone to work in your district. Educators who have completed a program outside of Connecticut and who are applying for certification based on their out-of-state program can have testing deferred. Now, very often, testing is waived for other reasons, but we have so many different pathways. So not everybody needs testing. If they don't meet one of the other criteria where they can have it waived, then they are going to, they can get an assessment deferral, and that's when they're going to get that non-renewable interim certificate. This is just, I want to remind you, you want to keep an eye on any of your educators who have that deferred testing, because you want to make sure that they are actively going in and making attempts and taking the test and signing up. When someone comes in and they get a non-renewable interim certificate, it's valid for 3 years. You don't want them to wait until the 3rd year to say, oh gosh, I better go take the test now. So sooner rather than later is definitely ideal. And they need to make sure that they pass the test prior to that certificate expiring. One of the types of transitional certificates that Connecticut offers is our temporary 90-day certificate. This is something that is issued only to individuals who have completed either the Office of Higher Ed ARC, the alternate route to certification program, or those who have completed the Charter Oak State College alternate route program. So this is not applicable for any other people. If someone comes in and they say, oh, I did a program in another state, or anything other than ARC and Charter Oak, this is not the file. This is not the application that comes in. That's only for those people. This is a 2-step process. So these are people who have completed their program. They're being recommended by their school. And the 172 is the district saying, yes, I want to hire this person. They're going to be with me for at least 90 days, serving in the endorsement area for which they've been recommended. And at the end of the 90 days, they can then move on and they get to move to the initial certificate. The first application, the ED 172, has to be partially completed by the district and partially by the applicant themselves. The part of it asks you to calculate a 90-day period. And the 2 things to keep in mind is that when you are calculating those dates, it is 90 working days. You are not counting holidays or weekends, or if it starts in the spring and goes over the summer, you're not counting the summer months. It's 90 school days. And the other thing to keep in mind is the effective date of the certificate cannot be backdated to any earlier than when the application comes in. So you cannot submit an application in October and ask for it to be issued with an effective date of August 29th. So keep that in mind. If you are submitting your applications electronically, then the date that you submit it, that's a great, that'll be our date. If there are problems with the dates and we have questions, we'll certainly reach out to you. But that's usually the one thing we run into is people calculating the dates a little off. And then at the end of the 90-day period, no sooner than 2 weeks before the end of that 90-day period is when you and the candidate apply separately to move from the 90-day to initial. That's the 172A. Again, that requires both the district confirming the person has served successfully, and the applicant themselves will be submitting fees to then move on to that initial level. There was a question in the last session that someone asked about if someone, you could hire someone as a substitute under the 90-day. And you can, as long as if the position is 90 days or longer. So it can't be for a short term, but if you say, gosh, I know I've got 90 days, but I can't guarantee they're going to be continuing after the 90 days, yes, you can do that. I mean, ideally is you're going to bring them for the 90 days and then keep them. But if they're there for at least 90 days, then yes, you can apply for that. Another transitional certificate that we have now is the resident educator certificate. These are people who are enrolled in a approved residency program. So we have a couple programs, the CREC teacher residency and Relay. Anyone enrolled in those programs, they are all going to go through the period of serving under a resident educator certificate before they get the initial. Other institutions, some of our regular traditional schools also can use this educator certificate, and that's perfectly fine. These are people who they have to be enrolled in the program. They have to have either passed all the tests, have a major, or been at least 1 year in the program. The idea of the resident educator is that it's usually a relationship that you have with a school that's offering this program, so that when they first enroll in the program, they're doing other things in the district. They're not serving as a teacher of record, but they're being mentored. Maybe they're working as a para and they're getting some experience. And then once the resident educator certificate is issued, it's valid for 2 years. And during that 2-year period, they must serve as the teacher of record for 1 full year. And that's what then allows them to move on to the initial certificate. I'm going to let you take over, please.
Thank you, Julianne. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kaylin Ricciardi. I'm presenting with my colleague Julianne today. Thank you very much for joining us. Durational shortage area permits. This is another temporary authorization that is done through a district submission. DSAPs are for permanent positions in the district and sought for those applicants who already hold a bachelor's degree and are enrolled in a planned program with at least 12 credits in the area sought. DSAPs are also for educators who are working on requirements to add a cross endorsement on their certificate, and they're issued specifically to the district. Now, for those DSAP holders that are just enrolled in their planned program, the university sign-off is an attachment, which is a part of that application process. If for some reason the university will not sign off, but they do have the 12 credits, we can move forward. It's not an ideal situation because we do want the EPPs, the university, to support it so they can give extra support to the candidate, but it's not required. We can move forward with that application. But we will request a plan of study just so we can have an idea of what will need to be completed in order for the applicant to eventually be eligible for full certification. Excuse me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I just have a quick question regarding.
Can we hold the questions to the end, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
realize.
that's okay. And if you could please just, if you have a quick one, you can definitely add it to the chat. We have someone that will answer questions in the chat. But we do have a time dedicated at the end of the presentation for questions. Thank you. No problem. So as we were saying, they're only valid to that district that is requesting it. Now our DSAPs can be renewed twice. Once the DSAP is issued, the applicant will receive what's called a DSAP letter. And that DSAP letter will outline everything the applicant will need to do during that year-long DSAP in order to be issued the certificate or to be able to renew it for the following year. We ask that you please confirm qualifications have been met before requesting the DSAP. Sometimes if you're not sure if they're enrolled in the correct program for the position you're trying to fill, or perhaps maybe a different authorization would be better in place of the DSAP. So if you're not sure, we always request that you reach out. Sometimes there's special situations, for example, the 062 for school library media specialist. You know, those credits need to be at the graduate level unless they're enrolled in the ACES program. So there's all these things sometimes that might have different pathways. So it's just better to give us a call if you're not sure. Another thing that that can be confusing with the DSAP is some of our endorsements, such as the remedial reading or our integrated early childhood / special education. Candidates can't just take coursework and testing. They actually have to be enrolled in a planned program. So the DSAP process would be a little bit different for those people, even if they already hold a certification. The same thing for a DSAP for our administrative endorsements, 092, 097. Those also require enrollment in a planned certification program. DSAPs may be issued for our out-of-state programs, and they may be requested in any subject area. Thank you. The Visiting International Teachers Permit. Now, if you'll notice on this slide, Wendy Harwin's email is highlighted there for you. Please contact her directly with any questions. She's the specialist in this area, and she would be able to answer your questions for you. Through the U.S. Department of State Exchange Programs under J-1 visas, educators who are certified in their home country, such as Spain, China, and some other countries, may be hired under a Visiting International Teacher Permit. These permits are issued for 1 year. These permits may be renewed 4 times. And if you want to hire this candidate in the position to be eligible, they will also have to pass the ACTFL OPI English test. Substitute authorizations. We have our daily substitutes with a bachelor's degree. We have our daily substitutes without a bachelor's degree. But it's important to highlight, Julianne was speaking about mandatory background checks. For these daily substitutes, those applicants are not going to be applying through the CSDE. So we will not be running a background check on those candidates. So for those daily substitutes, it will be on the district's responsibility to ensure that the criminal background checks are completed. So if you have a daily substitute that already holds the bachelor's degree, that does not require a permit. It's for any position less than 40 days. So if you have someone with a bachelor's degree, you can just employ them that way. If you have a substitute that has not completed their bachelor's degree, the district, in partnership with the applicant, will apply through the Qualtrics survey, which is located right on the district resources page. Once that Qualtrics survey is submitted, the district will receive an email confirmation. That is basically the certificate per se, and that should be kept in the educators or substitutes, I should say, folder, staff file, and a copy should be given to the candidate as well. So for long-term substitutes, just like our DSAPs, long-term substitutes can be submitted electronically to the SDE district email address. We request that if you are unsure whether the candidate will qualify for a long-term substitute or a DSAP, that you contact our office first to verify. And DSAPs should always be submitted first. If you're not sure, it's always best to submit the DSAP application first, because if the applicant is not eligible for the DSAP, the district will then submit the ED 175 for the long-term substitute authorization, and we will use the original submission date for the LTS. So no matter what, we will backdate it from that original DSAP submission date. And just like the DSAP, the long-term substitute, requires a bachelor's degree and 12 credits in the area in which certification is sought. And this is for any position over 40 school days. But please note that the district cannot remove a person from a position after 39 days and then put them back in a couple of days later or a week later for an additional 40 days. It does not have to be consecutive days. It's for any position over 40 school days. Recently, in the March 2023 CERT alert, was distributed to supers and to HR staff. The CERT alert outlined the requirements and the application process for temporary emergency authorizations for the 23-24 school year. The types of emergency authorizations are outlined in the slide. It's important to note that the 3/24 emergency authorization can only be issued to educators who hold a valid provisional or professional educator certificate. Emergency authorizations will be issued effective 8/1/23 to 6/30/24, or if you apply in January for it, it'll be valid from the date of that application submission in January, and it will be valid until 6/30/24. The other temporary authorization that we have on this slide is the TAMA, temporary authorization for a minor assignment. TAMAs are primarily used in middle and secondary schools where subjects are departmentalized. So anybody that holds an elementary certificate will not be eligible for a TAMA. TAMAs are also for those educators who have permanent positions in the district.
So these are two authorizations that you will probably see less often. The charter school educator permit is something that is only available for educators who are going to be working in one of Connecticut's charter schools. So if someone someone holds a CSEP, a charter school permit, and they come to your district and say, look, I have this permit, just be aware that you cannot hire them in any other any of the other districts. It only applies specifically to a particular charter school. And even for those, you can have no more than 30% of the staff in the charter school can hold this CSEP. This is generally for someone who they're not eligible for certification now. Maybe they don't meet the requirements for a long-term sub yet, but they have passed tests and that gives them a temporary pathway. This experience under this certificate does not count toward TRB, does not count and allow them to use that for any other purposes. So for example, if someone wanted to pursue an 092 administrative certificate, and which requires 5 years of experience, we cannot count CSEP service toward that the 50 months. The military spouse teacher permit has been in existence for a couple of years now. These are for people who have a spouse who has been directed to Connecticut, and they can apply for this temporary permit. There's no cost for them. These are people who generally are probably going to be eligible for certification anyway. They have to hold the certificate in another state and have teaching experience, under that certificate. The main benefit is these are individuals who maybe are coming into the state and don't expect to be here for very long. So rather than charging them, they can get this temporary permit, which allows them to serve. It's a full permit. They can, participate just like anyone else. But if they end up staying longer, you want to encourage someone to go ahead and pursue the regular full certification.
Kindergarten authorization and the birth to 3 authorization. Both of these waiver requests applications are submitted via Qualtrics survey on the district resources page. The K waivers are only for those educators who hold a valid elementary 1 through 6 certificate. For the K waiver to be renewed for a second year, the educator must submit evidence of enrollment in an approved 112 or 113 program. The birth to 3 waiver is for our birth to 3 programming. So it serves those students who are aged birth to age 2 years old and 11 months. So these B3 waivers are not used for pre-K classrooms in a public school system. The B2 3 waiver is a little different, as it allows educators with a special education certificate to serve in a birth to 3 program. Waivers are renewed when the educator applies to advance or renew their certificate. So it is a little bit differently. The K waiver does require that program after the first year in order to then move towards the cross endorsement of the 112 or the 113. The second item you'll note on the slide is the science crosswalk. This is really a resource tool to reference when filling science positions in the district. It does a really great job of explaining which science endorsement will authorize the teaching of different classes. This document will be posted on the district resources page on the certification website.
And I'll just mention one thing about the science crosswalk is, I mean, the bottom line is if someone is teaching a science course that integrates multiple areas of science, that's considered a general science. Whereas if someone is specifically teaching a biology course or a chemistry course or a physics course, they have to hold the endorsement specific to that area of science. So a person holding general science cannot teach physics. A person holding physics can teach general science. So it doesn't work the same direction, and we will be posting this soon.
Para-educator equivalency. Another certification flexibility the SDE put into a place allows a district to create a pathway for special education certification for employees who serve successfully as a special education paraprofessional. The special education paraprofessional will need to serve for at least 20 full months, and that will be considered equivalent to 12 semester hours of credit in special education coursework. The paraprofessional, special education paraprofessional, I should say, must hold a bachelor's degree to be eligible for this equivalency. To be eligible for the DSAP, the paraprofessional must be enrolled in an approved special education certification program. It's important to note that the university, however, will not recognize the experience as a special education paraprofessional as coursework or credit. So there may be a chance that they won't want to support that DSAP right off the bat. If the paraprofessional is not enrolled in an educator preparation program, then the district would request the long-term substitute authorization for that educator. Charter schools, for our charter schools, those educators who held the CSEP that was endorsed for 165 SPED, 2 years of successful service under the CSAP 165 can also be used towards the equivalency for a full certification in special education. Out-of-state applicants. For out-of-state certified educators seeking Connecticut certification, there are 2 pathways that may be followed. If the out-of-state educator is from one of the states listed in the first bullet on the slide, they will apply through the enhanced reciprocity pathway. When applicants apply either through enhanced reciprocity or our other method, they're always going to get the closest comparable endorsement to what Connecticut offers. If they come in and they have a valid certificate from any of those states listed on the slide, they will also qualify for a testing exemption for the test that's required for that endorsement. Sometimes what happens though is that states offer endorsements that Connecticut does not have. So we do our best to find the most comparable. One that definitely we get a lot of is our elementary certificates. Some states will issue elementary certificates 1 to 8 or pre-K to 8, or sometimes they'll do an early childhood program that was focused on pre-K to grade 3. However, the program wasn't integrated with special education, which is what's required in Connecticut. So unfortunately, that pre-K3 teacher will now be getting the elementary 1 through 6 certificate because that is the most comparable to the program and certificate that they hold in another state. When we see these applicants come in and apply for the 112 or the 113 through enhanced reciprocity, for all the other endorsements, we can just request a copy of their certificate. But for the early childhood, especially if it's not clear based on their certificate that it included students with or without disabilities, we will have to request additional documentation to have a better understanding of what their program entailed and if they'd be eligible for our early childhood certificate. It's important to note that for administration and special service candidates, they have to verify the applicable graduate degree. One thing that we're definitely noticing right now in Massachusetts, for example, they have what's called a school adjustment counselor. Now that role serves as like what our school social worker role would serve. However, in Massachusetts, they're not required to have an MSW to do this role. but Connecticut certification regulations require that any school social worker holds the MSW. So we have to see those advanced degrees in order to be issuing those through enhanced reciprocity. So if you have any applicants that you're seeing through enhanced reciprocity and you're not sure because it's an advanced degree or perhaps it's early childhood, please reach out to us and we'll gladly walk you through it. The second pathway out-of-state educators apply for certification is through the interstate agreement. Now, this is the old agreement that we've had in place. This is the traditional pathway for teachers and special service educators from all 50 states, including DC and Puerto Rico. Because this is the traditional pathway, we must require additional documentation to determine eligibility for the certification. Applicants will submit official transcripts, recommendations from universities, experience forms, and all other credentials required to determine eligibility for Connecticut certification. Just like enhanced reciprocity, applicants will receive the closest comparable endorsement that Connecticut offers based on the program or based on any out-of-state experience that they hold had under a valid certificate. So we will find the most comparable endorsement to what Connecticut offers based on what they've done in their other state. But another example for this, just like I made on the prior slide, is the 112, 113. We see it all the time where educators are coming in and they're like, I just want to teach kindergarten. And we understand, however, our regs will not permit it. Thank you. International applicants. For applicants applying for Connecticut certification based on education completed outside of the United States, those applicants must have an evaluation of their official transcripts from their whole country completed by one of the state's approved providers. The list of approved providers, as well as the complete application process, is available under the Educators tab on the main page of our website. It's important to note that these applications take longer to process. Therefore, the district may need to seek a temporary authorization, such as a DSAP or a long-term sub, for the applicant to serve under while their application is being reviewed and while they are working on requirements to obtain full certification. We have our interstate agreement with our 50 states, but we can't have that internationally. When an educator applies from another country, we have to treat it as if we're doing a complete transcript evaluation as well as testing evaluation for different GREs that need to be covered. So it's very likely, I would say about 98% of the time, that these applicants are going to have to do some sort of additional coursework to be issued first-time certification in Connecticut. Assessment exemptions. Applicants applying through enhanced reciprocity with a valid out-of-state certificate will qualify for the testing exemption. For applicants applying through the interstate agreement, they qualify for a testing exemption if they can verify 30 months of successful service under a valid certificate within the last 10 years. If they have a master's degree in an academic area in which certification is sought. And in sometimes, for example, if an applicant's coming from another state and the required test for their certification was the Praxis 2 math, we can accept that out-of-state test. There's additional paperwork that we have to do, but if we can find that the applicant took an equivalent test to Connecticut's test in their home state and they met our cut score, then we can accept that test as well. Cross endorsements. Bullet 1 that you'll see here lists all the designated shortage areas. Those designated shortage areas listed in bullet 1, applicants only a requirement to add the endorsement to the current certificate would mean to pass the accompanying test that's required. So if an applicant holds an elementary certificate and wants to add any middle or secondary math endorsement, all they would have to do is take that accompanying test to pass it. It's important to note history and social studies has been added. So as of July 1, 2023, this same process will apply to history and social studies. We're already starting to see some applicants apply for those cross endorsements, and we're telling them that if they can just hold off till July 1, 2023, submit those history, social studies practice scores, then you will not have to do additional coursework. So for those designated shortage areas, that's when the test would be required. And you'll see the asterisk there that lists the endorsements that are not applicable to taking the test. But other than that, you will need to there will be additional coursework and testing to add the endorsement. But like we said earlier, there's other cross endorsements that require a planned program, such as early childhood or remedial reading. So those cross endorsements will be a little bit different as well.
One other thing I'll mention is if you have candidates who say to you, I'm interested in a cross endorsement, on our main website, there is a link to endorsements, and they can look up and see the requirements to add any endorsement. So on that site, if you go to math, it's going to say, just take a test. If it says, I want to add family and consumer science, it'll bring you and tell you exactly what test and what coursework you need.
Validity of certificates. All right. We reviewed various temporary authorizations that an educator may be issued to cover assignments outside of their certification area today. But when you're looking at integrated early childhood, elementary and middle grades endorsement, and bilingual elementary, those teachers can only teach within their grade level. You cannot go up, you cannot go down. The secondary subjects, which is the last topic noted on the slide, those educators that hold those secondary 7 through 12 endorsements, they can teach down to the 5th grade as long as they're teaching in a departmentalized setting. World language can teach down to 4th grade as long as it's only world language all day long. So we do have very strict guidelines. For an educator to serve outside of their certification area, even if it's just for 1 period a day, they must hold an appropriate authorization.
This is one of those persistent rumors that's out there that says, oh, it's just one class or one subject or 1 grade, and that is absolutely not true. So that's one to be careful of.
Then we have our obsolete endorsements. You may have educators in your district that hold these certifications, and if they've maintained them over the years, they keep them. However, all of this endorsements listed on this slide are now obsolete and will not be issued to first-time applicants. That middle grades one specifically, all of our middle grades endorsements are content-based. So they're subject specific. So they would need middle school chemistry, middle school math, middle school gen science to be able to teach those areas. So these are former endorsements for the middle school, allows you to teach all areas. But this one's specific, but now they're content specific. Sorry, there's some. Thank you. Coaching permits. If you have a coach that is providing any type of skill instruction, they must be properly permitted. This is a liability concern for districts. The 5-year renewable coaching. So there's different requirements for a 5-year renewable coaching permit for certified staff versus non-certified staff. For our certified staff, for a coaching permit 5-year, you would submit evidence of module 15 and a valid CPR first aid card. For non-certified staff, it's module 15, an approved coaching course, verification of the completion of high school, and a first aid CPR card. If you have a certified educator in your district that is applying for a coaching permit, or if you have a coach that has previously held a 5-year coaching permit, they are not eligible to apply for a temporary coaching permit. Temporary coaching permits are only issued to those applicants who are not certified and have not completed an approved coaching course. Those temporary coaching permits it's a district submission of an application. The coaching permit itself is issued directly to the district itself. So that means the coach cannot go coach anywhere else other than the district where the temporary permit has been issued to. This permit is issued for 1 year, and it can be renewed for a 2nd year as long as the coach provides evidence of enrollment in an approved coaching course. I also think it's important to note that CPR and first aid taken in the online only format cannot be accepted. I know now they're offering hybrid courses where part of it's online and then there's an in-person skill session. That's fine. As long as the card at the end when they submit it to us does not read online only, we can accept it. I always recommend with coaching permits to apply early. A 5-year renewable coaching permit, you can submit the application up to 6 months in advance. I don't know if that's necessary, but you can to renew a permit in advance, just because the standard background checks are going to take about at least 4 weeks to clear. And we run into this. And I know the districts, it's like when you're trying to find someone quick to fill the position, it's kind of last minute. But if you can at least try to give us 6 weeks, that way you can, the background checks will clear and we can more seamlessly issue that permit. All right.
Lapse certificates. So the main thing with this is just being aware, and I think everyone in HR is very aware of this, that how important it is not to allow your certificate to lapse. If it does, then there are potential consequences where someone may need to take a new test to regain the certificate. They might lose an endorsement. Maybe they had the old elementary that was K-6 and it lapsed, and now they only can be issued a 305 and do grades 1 to 6. It impacts their teacher retirement. It creates compliance issues for the district. So there are many reasons why you really want to stay on top. This is something that you can see in the EDS. You can check your status of whose certificates are coming up to be time to renew. The statutes do require districts to notify provisional certificate holders. I think pretty much all of our districts notify everyone just as a courtesy. It is ultimately the educator's responsibility. But I would say a big tip is make sure you're watching your folks, because sometimes they get busy in life and they just forget, they don't realize they haven't submitted an application. Another thing I see is someone will have an experience form submitted in or some other supporting document, but not the application itself. So what's important is the application has to be submitted and received. And if their application's in, they will have received a correspondence, an automated email saying, thank you for applying. If they haven't received that email confirming that their application's been received, it hasn't been received. Educator certification lookup. This I mentioned earlier on, that the public lookup is on the bottom of our main page, and then the district lookup is the one that right now is still the same. It's not different yet, but we are going to have it set up so that you will be able to enter the last 4 digits and be able to print copies of the certificate. You cannot do that through the public lookup, which is our general FOI lookup. This page I wanted to mention, even though it's not part of the CECS, the Ed site is where the public and anyone can log in and get information about districts. This is where they're going to see your level of compliance. The requests, if you're looking for to run reports of certified educators for recruiting purposes, I want to run a report and see every elementary certified person in the state, or I want every science certified person in my district. That is done through EdSite Secure. So if you go to the EdSite main page and scroll to the bottom, you'll see there's a little lock there. It says login. That's a separate login, and only certain people in the district have access to that. Usually it's someone in an administrative capacity. If you're not sure who in your district has access to that, you can reach out to Ray Martin and he can tell you. And if let's say the superintendent says, gosh, I want you to have access to, then he can work with Ray Martin to get you added as well. And then that's where you would log in and you can do a search for active endorsements for recruiting purposes. And that will give you the names and the email addresses. And it can be very specific. You can say, I want everyone who's not currently serving. I want to see everyone, whether they're serving or not. Not that we don't want to encourage you to poach staff from other districts. So there is the option to say not currently working. But we know it's tough times. So that's how you can get that information. Annual compliance review. So everyone loves the annual compliance review, I know, and this is something that has been going on for years. The process has changed slightly. Years ago, we would print out paper reports and mail them out to you, and you had to make all the changes on the paper report and then mail them back in. That is no longer the process now that you can log in to EDS and check the status of your certificates and your staff at any time. You can check compliance at any time, and that is all readily available to you. And for that reason, we encourage you to check on a regular basis to look for compliance issues. Someone might be fine at the beginning of the school year, and then midway through the school year, if you checked again, oh no, their certificate expired, or so you want to keep an eye on that. So we will not be sending the reports to you. You go in and you make the corrections as they occur throughout the year. If you have questions and you can't figure out why someone is showing as an error, then definitely you're going to reach out to our office and we will direct you and help you with that. But you want to make sure that these are issued. The codes are changed regularly. We have new updates every year. And so you want to keep an eye on those to see new ones. For example, like when integrated STEM was introduced, that became a new assignment code. And sometimes the requirements for serving in a position change. So again, you want to use that tool, that guide as a real tool. The option of unlisted teaching or non-teaching, those do require written approval. So if you have someone that you think, I just don't see an assignment code that fits with this person, I think they're going to be unlisted, then again, you'll send that into our office. We'll take a look and we'll either direct you to the appropriate code or we'll approve the use of the unlisted code. This information is back on the district page where it has a little compliance link, so you can get that information there. The assignment codes are very important. I'm going to go back to that one again. So you want to use that resource. You want to make sure that the codes are updated and correctly noted every year. There are, if there is a code that's incorrect, it can cause an issue for the person who's looking to then advance or obtain another endorsement. A common one we run into is people who apply for the remedial reading language arts consultant administrative certificate. That our laws, the regulations require that person to have served for at least 1 year as a remedial reading teacher. It's not any service under the 102, it's specifically as a remedial reading teacher. So if they've been working as a literacy interventionist or a non-remedial reading teacher, that experience is not going to allow them to pursue the 097. So again, if you're not sure what their role entails, you can reach out to our office and we will help you with that. You also want to make sure that when you are filling out the 126 forms, we don't use them nearly as often anymore, because now we have the automatic system in the EDS that shows, but you want to make sure that information, whatever's in the EDS, correctly aligns with what you're putting on the ED 126. Once in a while, we will receive a 126 and it will say one thing, and then the EDS says something different. And then in that case, we have to reach out. We need a written explanation as to why there's this discrepancy. So again, you want to be very careful with that. When you are filling out the ED 126 forms, which again, hopefully that's going to continue to get less and less as we have more people who are serving and entered into the EDS with their success, you want to make sure that you're only listing the endorsement that the person is serving under, what they're actually doing, what their position entails. Oftentimes you'll have somebody who will say, no, but I don't want to, I list all of my endorsements because I don't want to lose them. You don't have to serve under every endorsement to maintain it, but we need to know which one you are serving under so we can appropriately advance a certificate. So if you say someone's in a teaching position, but you list 092 and 026, then we're going to say that doesn't make sense. You don't need an administrative certificate to be a teacher. So you want to make sure that is appropriate. If they have multiple positions, there should be multiple entries, both in the EDS and on that 126 form. So I'm, .8, I'm a teacher, but .2, I'm a department chair. Those need to be listed separately. And the information has to include the signature of the superintendent unless we have a note on file of an official designee, approved designee. We do maintain that list in our office. So when the 126 forms come in, we look for either the superintendent or someone on that list. And if you're not on that list, you'll might get pushback saying we don't have the right person. All of the forms, like the 126, again, can be submitted electronically to the SDE email address, so that'll make it easier for submission. And just a note about the successful versus unsuccessful service, that is something that you as the district are going to determine what you mean by successful, unsuccessful. Now, obviously, if it's something very extreme, yes, you should be putting unsuccessful if they've harmed a child, for example. But beyond that, there are other cases where it's not going to cause them to lose their certificate. For example, just some districts say, okay, you did not meet our expectations and therefore you were not successful. Doesn't mean successful, doesn't mean you have to be teacher of the year, but unsuccessful, there's a gray area. So again, that's when you might identify that. And if you do put unsuccessful, just be aware that we are going to reach out because we have to then investigate and to see what do you mean by unsuccessful? Were you unsuccessful because you were late to work every day, or were you unsuccessful because you actually did something harmful? So that's where we'll look for more specifics on that area. Common compliance errors that we run into, again, you want to make sure you're very carefully looking at that assignment code and the grade level. For example, if you put in elementary and then you listen as a kindergarten teacher, that's going to kick out on compliance because kindergarten has its own assignment code separate from elementary. And if you put elementary and in grade 7, it's going to kick out because they don't match. So you want to look carefully at what you're entering. If someone is serving in grade 6 and they are a classroom teacher teaching all subjects, you're going to enter them as elementary. But if they are teaching only English in grade 6, you're going to enter them as teaching English, not elementary, and then the grade level. So you want to be careful with that. You want to make sure that they are working in the appropriate code level. Another common error we have is the use of S for a grade level. That is indicating that you are a system-wide administrator, and that is not, that is one that you should not be using very often. If they are serving across all grades, let's say it's the school psychologist and they're across all grades, you would not enter as the S, you'd enter all pre-KK, what you've listed them all the numbers. So that's one common error. And a couple other things, intervention academic support. That is something in past years you had to have a grade and subject appropriate endorsement to provide intervention or academic support, literacy support, math support. That is currently the requirement is they can either hold a grade or subject appropriate endorsement. So for example, I am a math interventionist. I can hold an endorsement that covers math, or I can hold an endorsement that just covers the grade, or I can hold an endorsement, let's say it's elementary, which covers all subjects. Administrative endorsements do not authorize teaching, so just be aware of that. And again, the remedial, non-remedial is something I mentioned because we do have some issues with that one. Curriculum program director versus reading consultant. This one seems to confuse because there's a lot of overlap. Basically, if someone is overseeing the curriculum or the program for a district in a particular area, math or science, and they need to have the 092. If they are overseeing the reading program, then that's the person who needs the 097. If you are working as a reading specialist and you are working with all the students, that's not reading consultant. Reading consultant is an administrative role. If you are serving as a reading consultant overseeing the program and you are providing feedback to certified staff, then you need to have the 092 and the 097. Another one that we see is the occupational subjects, the 098. That is for vocational areas. So someone who's teaching carpentry or someone who's teaching hairdressing or culinary arts. Those certificates have very specific areas of study that they're allowed. So an 098 does not mean they can teach any occupational subject. You need to make sure that you're looking at the write-in on the certificate. So if the certificate says culinary arts, that person cannot teach engine repair. So again, look carefully at that. The difference between that versus tech ed is more like your engineering, your communication, your transportation, manufacturing. That's like the old industrial arts, that kind of courses. And again, if you're not sure which one it is, then you can definitely reach out to our office and check. If they are working under an 098, then we have to make sure you're coding them as working under their 098 as opposed to working under their tech ed. So that's another common error that we will receive. Approved designees, this is what I was mentioning, that we keep a list in our office. Now, every year we have, staff changes over. Maybe sometimes we get a new superintendent and sometimes it's just a new person in the office. So that's something you want to keep an eye on and make sure that we get an update from the district if there have been changes. If someone's left and they're no longer at your district and we want to remove them from that designee list, or if someone's new has been hired, just please make sure that we are aware of that. Caitlin?
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you. There is a process for appointing a new superintendent. The CSDE must be notified and the district must receive approval from us. As highlighted on the slide, the board chair submits a letter to the Commissioner of Education, and then the letter of approval is sent back to the board chair. So there is a formal process for that. Human resources best practices. The Bureau of Certification will no longer, I should say, sends out notification letters to educators regarding their certification's expiration date. We halted this practice because 50% of the letters were being returned as undeliverable because educators' mailing addresses were not up to date in the system. So therefore, we suggest that the district would designate time during your August, January professional learning sessions, give them a chance to log into their account, and then they might find, oh, I can't get in, or my address is wrong, or my email needs updating. Or, they might see my cert expires this year. I need to get on that. So it's just a way to keep them organized, because me as a formal teacher myself, it's like when you're in it every day, you're really not thinking about that often. So just giving them an opportunity to check in on their account will be very helpful to them, but also very helpful to you. So that way you're not dealing with lapses or anything like that. Please contact us directly about specific applicants for temporary authorizations. If you're not sure, if you need help looking at a transcript, please let us know. And if you'll notice on the last bullet, we talk about cert alerts. Our cert alerts are always sent directly to superintendents first. But since once they're sent, our office then directly sends them to all of our HR partners. So we make sure that you see them right away. And so in that case, just make sure that we have your up-to-date email on our distribution list. We want to make sure that you are all up to date with everything that's happening. And we do produce ongoing cert alerts for anything that changes, just like the one we sent last month about the emergency authorizations.
I'll also mention that at the end of our presentation, we're going to follow up with a feedback form. When you respond to that feedback form, if you are not sure whether you are listed as one of the HR contacts, go ahead and make sure you say, please add me to your contact list. This is separate than our formal superintendent one. So this is something that we're trying to keep updated because, again, people change. So if you're not sure if you're there, just let us know and we'll add you to our list.
So this is our contact information for the public. Your educators in the district, if they want to contact us, they will utilize our email address or they will call the public phone line at the dates and time noted. You'll also see on this slide the address for electronic transcripts. How electronic transcripts work is the applicant or the educator will go directly to the university and they will, when they say, where would you like this sent? That is the address they put in. That is how it's considered official. If it comes directly from the university to our e-transcript email address, if applicants submit a transcript attached to an email to that email address, it is not considered official. It may be an official transcript that they know is real, but we can't accept that legally. So here's the process of the public excuse me, here's the public information for contacting us. This is different than what we give to our districts for superintendent's line and district contact, but this is the information that we ask that you share with your staff in your districts for your educators, please. And here is the contact information for our districts as well. You have the district resources page that is dedicated specifically to your needs as a Connecticut school district. You have the SDE district email address. We ask you, please do not share that. If one of your educators does, certified educators does email us, we will not respond. When an email is sent to that email address, there's an automatically response that's received. And that email often says that if you're a teacher, please email us at ourteacher.cert, because we cannot we want to be able to keep the volume of that down so we can give you better customer service. And that's the best way that we can do it if it's only specific to our districts trying to contact us. Designated superintendent's telephone lines, we don't give those out even on this slide. Your superintendent has that number. So if you're not sure what it is and you would like to be able to contact us, please contact your superintendent's office. And they have a designated phone line for your district to be able to call with specific certification questions about applicants and applications.
And if the superintendent says, oh, I don't know where that is, they can send us a quick email to the district email and we'll send them that flyer that was shared at the beginning of the school year.
Yes, definitely. We do still have it. It's just not something we give out, just again, so we can give you that better customer service and attention. We have 179 districts that are trying to call us, as well as we also have our charters and what have you. So we really want to make sure that we can get back to you as soon as possible.
And since this slide deck and recording was going to be posted on the website, that's another reason we did not want to list it in here for the public to come across the superintendent line.
Yes, definitely. And questions. Throughout this presentation, you may have been putting questions in the chat and Patty may have been helping us and assist. But Patty, do we have any questions that you've kind of put together that we can address? And then afterwards, we can start taking questions as well.
Well, not so much questions. Hi, everyone. There was a couple of requests to be put on an email list to receive the presentation, which of course, if their email contact information is with us, Julie had mentioned we go ahead and share that. So that's
we will share it out. Correct. Yes.
Perfect. And two more things I would add. One was a coaching question, a bit specific in a sense that while volunteers and coaches all need to be permitted, the specific question had to do with what about an advisor for an athletic club, such as golfing, a running club?
Are they providing skill instruction?
Is
there another permitted coach on site? If they're giving any type of skill instruction, whether it's an after school club or intramurals, they have to be permitted. It's a liability factor. If you have a permitted coach that's there and working directly with this person, then as long as there's a permitted person there, but really the regs say any type of skill instruction needs to be permitted. A permitted
volunteers.
Not even volunteers. Yes. It's a liability.
Great. Just wanted to clarify that. And the only other offer that I would make specifically is the fact that we are working with very limited staff, as the districts know, like everywhere else these days. So I would want to mention that as we get ready to go into our quote busy season, please know that the volume of emails into our teacher cert box is extensive currently, and there is a 4-week distribution time frame, which would include data entry, emails received by the Bureau to then reach one of our 6 consultants for review and response. So I just want to make sure the districts realize that piece as well, because we are very limited in our front office. But as far as questions go, I don't think we have them. Good job, girls. You answered them all.
I have
I think it's important to add, and I hopefully this, Patty, just adding on to what you just said about timeline and our staffing, and hopefully this is just a temporary problem. But unfortunately, all of our scanners in the talent office have been down since the first week of March. Julie, would you say first week of March? So we now have a backlog of paperwork that's just waiting, and honestly, the front office staff is amazing. They're very organized, but they have so much waiting for them, which will then be coming to us. So if you're wondering about coaching applications or things that you might have mailed in, we may have received it. We definitely date stamped it or data entered it, but it has not been scanned into the file. This isn't going to affect applications that are submitted during the district email address. This is more impacting, like if an applicant mails something into us, we can't actually physically take it now and put it into their file. So there's a huge backlog on that. So we're thinking that April is going to be quite interesting for us. Hopefully this problem will be resolved soon, but we have multiple people working on this issue right now, including contractors, and everyone is just, they can't figure it out. So we're hoping that it'll be addressed very soon.
The email, if you want to request to be added to our HR contact list, you can send that to the district, the SDE districts. That you can use that one. Also, like I said, we're going to be sending out a follow-up form, and when you respond with that, you can also say, oh, by the way, please add me. So there'll be a couple different ways that you can do that. Two other things that came to mind that we mentioned, but I wanted to go just an extra emphasis. One is on the long-term sub-authorizations, another one of our very persistent rumors. That is 40 days in a school year, which means you cannot hire someone for 39 days and take them out and then put them back in that same position. It's 40 days, whether they're consecutive or not. It's throughout a single school year. And that's another rumor that's been out there for a long time. The other area I wanted to mention is just for you to be aware that our provisional certificates are now renewable. Previously, you had to complete requirements to advance within a certain period of time, and that is now changed in legislation. And so if you have someone who's at the provisional level and has not met the requirements, they haven't completed their master's or, met the requirements to advance, they can renew at the provisional level. So that is, if they're eligible for professional, they have to move forward. But if they're not eligible, they can renew continuously. They're not going to lose their certificate, which was a previous threat that used to exist.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes, the first webinar that was provided on March 24th, is that available as well?
We haven't, it's the same presentation. We just haven't posted it yet. Yeah, it's the same presentation. We were just going to wait until we did both of them before we posted. So we will be posting a recording and the slide deck as well.
To the district resources page. Yes, you will have both. Correct. Yes. You're welcome. No problem. Yes, there's a lot of information here and we understand that, but we just didn't want to release it until we had a chance to present it to both sessions.
And the only other thing I would add is that I do note that in the teacher.cert email box, we are still getting some district submissions, whether an ED 126 form, sometimes it's a coaching application. Again, we're going to ask you to use that other email address because we just want to give that preference in case that cert inbox isn't reviewed for 4 weeks or more, especially at the moment. But I just want to mention that one more time. Really important to use the dedicated district email address. And thanks.
Yes, definitely. Don't want us to get lost in the shuffle.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody thinks of questions after the presentation is ended, do feel free to drop those emails to that same district email address, and we're always happy to respond or clarify anything you might have missed during the presentation.
Absolutely. And like we said, we will be sending out those the forms for this. So please let us know. And you could definitely include questions on that as well, or in the email when you submit them. Yes, please.
And one last note that just came in. Are we participating in or offering any additional training at the CASPA annual meeting on May 12th? Are we involved in that?
We are. Yes, I will be there that day. I will be there that day. And if someone wants to reach out to the email address and contact me directly about that, we can chat. But I will be there presenting on topics such as this that day.
Excellent.
And please don't hesitate to reach out to our office. I mean, very often we'll get a call and say, I'm sorry to bother you, but that's why we're here. We'd much rather you reach out and let us offer you some guidance or clear up a misunderstanding. You know, we're happy to do that for you. So don't ever worry about coming in and calling or emailing or, you know, reaching out to us. Let us help in any way that we can. We want to be able to provide as much assistance as we can.
And I just want to say again, we know we gave a lot of information today, and there's a lot, but we really just needed to get all this out there as a tool that we can have on the website so you can access the different slides. You know, we please in the feedback form, we're asking you to tell us any other specific PD sessions that you feel would be helpful. But we know this one's big and we know it's overarching, but it's like we just had to get so much updated stuff out there and have it ready for you for next school year.
Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.